Karen, thank you very much. I've never actually been particularly good at predicting the outcomes of Conservative leadership elections. I've been involved in 4. I won the first one, and I've been on a losing streak ever since in terms of getting it right. If there were, I would try to pick the winner rather than pick the person I thought was right for the role. But I think there's one thing I just wanted to say on this. There will be people who think, oh, what on earth is going on? We've got a Prime Minister who's just been forced out. We've now got another leadership election. They all appear to be sort of joshing for position. Actually, what's going on is entirely natural and normal, and it's what our Constitution's designed to deliver, which is fundamentally when a Prime Minister loses the confidence of Parliament, one way or the other they leave. And one way or the other, a replacement is selected in the usual way, and Her Majesty the Queen will be calmly waiting to decide who number 15 is going to be that she should call in to appoint to create a new government. And so we should not get too worried about the events that are going on, because this is actually just our Constitution working as it's designed to work. We don't have a presidential system. We have a parliamentary democracy and a Prime Minister who is selected by the MPs. Now, on the food and drink industry, I wanted to first of all thank Karen and the team at the FDF, and in fact the whole food and drink industry, for everything that they did, particularly during the pandemic. Within weeks of becoming Secretary of State, we were thrust into the whole problem of the coronavirus pandemic. Many of you would have been involved in that early episode when we had a panic buying incident that lasted for about 10 days to 2 weeks. In that time, we saw demand for food go up by about 50%. We saw everything absolutely being run off its legs to get food to stores. People piled up some 4 or 5 billion pounds worth of food in their cupboards and in their fridges. And the food industry at no stage let us down. During that pandemic, key workers in the food industry continued to turn up for work while others stayed at home and worked from home. They had to wrestle with huge, immensely difficult challenges of staffing, as we had absence levels rising at periods due to COVID, and they had to deal with those huge spikes and uncertainty sometimes about supply chain and certain ingredients coming. And I just wanted to pay tribute to the food industry for the way that they responded in such a phenomenal way to deal with that crisis. And I know, as Jim said, here we go. Yeah, let's all give this up to round of applause. As Jim said, look, as we come out of the pandemic, there are pressures on supply chains around the world. You can't just throw a spanner in the works of the world economy for the best part of 2 years and not think actually that there'll be impacts. So we are seeing significant inflationary pressure, exacerbated of course by the war in Ukraine that's driving up gas prices and agricultural commodity prices as well. Globally, there are labour shortages. I was in the US at the end of April. They also have labour shortages. I know we've got particular issues here. We've got a seasonal agricultural workers scheme. But we are also going to address that. We're going to have a review around labour needs in the food industry more generally, and that's going to be an important first step to trying to deal with this particular issue. Now, the other thing, as Karen said and as John Stevenson said, the food industry is our biggest manufacturing industry, bigger than aerospace and automotive put together, and we see it as a crucial part of our levelling up agenda as a government, because there is food manufacturing in every part of our country, and in some of the more economically fragile parts of our country, it's an even larger, more important employer in those regions. And food manufacturers offer apprenticeships, they drive research and development in those areas, they invest in communities. Some of the great philanthropists that we have throughout history, people like the Westons and Cadbury and Rowntree, all of whom established fantastic charitable foundations, all of whom invested in their communities. And there are smaller examples of that up and down the country. So in our food strategy, we set out very clearly the role that we see for the food and drink industry as part of that levelling up agenda that we have. We stress the importance of successful, profitable domestic food production, both on agriculture and on manufacturing, towards our our national resilience and our food security as a country. It's got a vitally important role to play, and we learned that in particular during the pandemic. And we want to do all that we can to help this industry go forward and prosper and become stronger still. And then the final thing that we address, of course, in that food strategy are where some of the challenges are. And we all know that there are challenges on obesity. It's a huge health issue that we're having to deal with at the moment. I want to pay tribute to the fantastic work that the industry has done over the last 20 years. Some of those responsibility deals that were started under the last Labour administration actually have yielded some really important results. Some of them petered out, but we've seen major changes on reformulation to reduce salt. I recently visited a Walker's crisp factory where they are on the cusp of being able to get a crisp that's on the right side of the line as far as the high in fat, salt and sugar criteria are concerned. We've seen others in sectors like confectionery doing the right thing on portion size. We've seen the soft drinks levy drive a huge amount of innovation to reformulate and remove sugar from soft drinks. So the industry's done a huge amount already, and we want to continue to work with industry to go further on some of these areas to try to drive that reformulation further so that we can tackle this particular agenda. And then finally, of course, everything that we do in this world has an impact on the environment. And we want to work closely with industry on, in particular, trying to drive changes on packaging and reducing the amounts of packaging that we use. I know that there are some concerns around extended producer responsibility and even the deposit return scheme. My view on both of these policies is that they're the right direction to be going. But they are quite large, complex policies, and so at every step of the way where I feel there's a risk, I'm always willing to take a little bit longer to get there and to stage things and phase things in a sensible way so that we don't have a good policy with the right intentions that comes unstuck because we try to rush it and we don't get things right. And I hope you will have seen that in the decisions I've taken to date, and we obviously want to continue to work with you in the future on that. So once again, a real pleasure to be here. In my now 9 years in DEFRA, I've never ceased to be anything but impressed by this fantastic industry. Some of the most interesting visits I've had have been to food factories. Every one of them has some unique piece of robotic kit, or in one case, their brand relied on having 1950s equipment because that gave them the authenticity of their particular biscuit. And it's an extraordinary industry, full of innovation, full of talented, creative people. And whatever might happen in the months ahead, I'm sure this is an industry that's got a fantastic future. And I wanted to take this opportunity, in case I don't get it again, to thank you for all of the help and support that you've given me over these 9 years. Thank you.